Chapter 1. The Call That Split My Life in Half. The day was supposed to be ordinary. In fact, it had started that way, too ordinarily. I'd been sitting in my glass-walled office on the 27th floor, sunlight bouncing off models of future high-rise projects, a cup of cold coffee on my drafting table, and a half-argued email open on my screen. My life was built on routine precision. Predictable, ordered, structured. So when my phone buzzed with an unknown number, I let it ring twice before picking up. "Mr. Reinhardt?" a voice asked. A man, steady but tense. "Yes, this is he. This is Officer Hale with the Belmont Police Department. Sir, you need to come to your address immediately." My posture straightened. "What happened?" "There's been an incident." A pause. Short but heavy. "Your family is at the scene." For a moment, all I heard was the quiet hum of the office AC. My mind raced. My parents? Victoria? An accident? A break-in? What kind of incident? I pressed. "Sir, it would be better if you saw it yourself." The worst 9 words any man could hear. "Are they hurt?" "No serious injuries, but they're shaken." I didn't wait for more. The chair screeched as I stood. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and walked straight out. My assistant called after me. Something about meetings, but her voice faded behind the rush of blood pounding in my ears. The drive home was a blur of stoplights and horns. Every scenario flashed through my mind. My father collapsing, my mother falling, a fire, a robbery, something with Victoria. The dread built like pressure in my chest, tightening with every turn. When I pulled into my street, seeing the police car parked outside my driveway nearly made my heart stop. But it wasn't the cruiser that froze me. It was the sight of my wife sitting on the front steps, shoulders shaking, hands covering her face, and my parents standing beside her. My father looked grim. My mother had her hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. I slammed my car door and hurried up the path. "What happened?" I demanded. "Someone tell me what the hell is going on." Victoria lifted her head, and her eyes were red and swollen. "Dom, I'm so sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. "For what?" I snapped louder than intended. "Is someone hurt? Mom? Dad? You?" My father stepped forward and put a firm hand on my arm. "Son, listen." His voice had that tone he only used in funerals, quiet and bracing. She didn't mean for it to go this far. My stomach dropped. Go this far? What did that even mean? I looked at Victoria. She instantly broke down again, covering her face with both hands. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked my father again, more desperately. "What did she do?" My mother cleared her throat softly, as if she didn't want to speak at all. We didn't know what we were walking into. Your wife called us before the police did." "The police?" I repeated sharply. That was when Officer Hale stepped out of my house, nodding at me. "Mr. Reinhardt, glad you made it. We've secured the immediate area. No injuries, but you want to take this slowly." "Take what slowly?" My pulse hammered. I looked at Victoria again. "What did you do?" She reached out a shaking hand toward me. "Dominic, please just listen to me. I didn't want them to call you at work. I didn't want the police here. I just want to fix it before I see what?" My voice cracked. I couldn't help it. She burst into sobs, shoulders quivering violently, and buried her face in her palms. My father exhaled long and pained. "Son, she begged us to keep you from going to the garage." "The garage? Why the garage?" I stared at them, all three, my mind skidding. Because in that moment, the dread twisted into something colder, something sharper. I stepped forward. "Move," I said quietly. Victoria jumped to her feet and grabbed my arm. "Dominic, don't. Please don't go in there. I'm begging you, just talk to me first." Her nails dug into my sleeve. She was trembling violently. Officer Hale took a careful step closer. "Sir, I advise you to remain calm. Whatever you see, we can walk you through it." "Let me go," I told Victoria. She didn't. She clung harder. Her breathing was quick, terrified, not in the way someone is scared of consequences, but in the way someone is scared of exposure. "Dom, listen to me. Let me go," I repeated louder. My father gently pulled her back. "Victoria, sweetheart, give him space." "No," she shouted, surprising all of us. "He can't see it. He can't see what's in there." She collapsed to her knees, sobbing. My mother's hand shot to her mouth. Officer Hale looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight as if debating whether to intervene. And me? I felt something inside me shift, a sense of inevitability, like I was standing on the edge of drop, and the wind had already pushed me forward. I walked toward the side gate leading to the garage. Victoria scrambled after me, nearly tripping. She grabbed my arm again, fingers slipping against my jacket. "Dominic, please, you don't understand. I swear I can explain everything, I swear. What did you do?" I asked her again, but this time my voice was low. Too calm, dangerously calm. She cried harder. My father took her by the shoulders. "Let him go," he murmured. "No!" Her scream cracked. "Don't let him see the garage." My steps faltered. Those words hit something deep and primal. I turned. She was on her knees in the gravel, reaching for me with both arms, sobbing like she was watching her life burn. My father looked at me helplessly. "Son," my mother whispered, "maybe we should prepare him." Officer Hale cleared his throat. "Mr. Reinhardt, we can go with you if you prefer." I ignored them all. I walked to the garage door. My pulse thudded loudly in my ears. My hand hovered over the handle. "Dominic," Victoria choked behind me. "Please, don't. I can fix this. I can fix everything. Please just don't look." Her desperation made my blood run cold. Because people don't plead like that unless there's something unforgivable behind the door. I closed my hand around the handle. Victoria screamed again. "Dominic, stop!" But I didn't. With one hard shove, I threw the door open, and whatever was inside stopped my breath, my thoughts, and the entire structure of my life in a single instant. Chapter 2. The Garage of Ruin. The door crashed open so hard it smacked the interior wall. For a moment, the sound echoed, a sharp, hollow clap that felt like it split the air clean in half. I took a single step inside. Then everything in me stopped. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. It was like my skull had been struck by a blunt force, not from outside, but from whatever I was seeing. My garage, the place where I kept my tools, blueprints, leftover lumber, the bicycles hanging neatly on their hooks, was no longer a garage. It was a crime scene. No, worse. It was a monument, a shrine to betrayal. The walls, every wall, were plastered with photos. Hundreds of them. Some printed, some blown up, some blurry, some painfully, vividly clear. All of Victoria. Victoria and Bradley Winters. My best friend since childhood. My business partner. My brother in everything but blood. There they were, laughing together, kissing, holding hands in hotel hallways, lying tangled in beds I didn't recognize. My wife and my friend. My vision blurred for a second, but not with tears, with something deeper, darker. Behind me, someone gasped. My mother maybe, or Victoria. It didn't matter. I moved deeper in, numb. The walls weren't just covered with photos. There were text message screenshots pinned with thumbtacks. Sequences of emails printed in full. Some highlighted, some circled, some annotated in handwriting I recognized instantly. Bradley's. "Let's meet at the Crestwood again. Same room. He won't suspect a thing. Just tell him you're working late. He trusts both of us too much." My jaw tightened. Too much. Yeah, I did. There were receipts. Reservation confirmations. Credit card statements. Why were these even here? Why had this all been gathered like some sick display? My eyes swept right and froze again. My drafting table. The one I kept in the garage to work quietly on personal projects. It was covered with my blueprints. Not the current versions. These were rough drafts, early models, aborted lines of thought, the kind of sketches no one was ever supposed to see. Duplication marks, digital prints, scan copies, annotated edits that weren't mine. My revolutionary sustainable high-rise, the concept I'd spent years perfecting, reworking, sculpting, had been torn apart like a carcass. Sections circled in red. Notes written in Bradley's slanted handwriting. Needs better pitch angle for investors. Victoria said he's close to presenting. Must finish before he does. Market this as our joint innovation. My hands curled into fists. Something scraped behind me. Victoria stumbling into the doorway, breathless, panicked. "Dominic, please don't look at those," she sobbed. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because if I looked at her, I didn't know what would come out of me. You two used my home, I said quietly. The words tasted metallic. You used my garage to plan this? No, she cried. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted you to please listen to me, but all I heard was a buzzing in my skull. A low, vibrating hum like electricity arcing dangerously. I stepped closer to the wall of photos. One image was larger than the rest, centered perfectly, like a centerpiece. Victoria in a black dress. Bradley behind her, hands on her waist, his face in her neck. Both smiling. Comfortable. Familiar. A couple's portrait. Not a fling. Not a mistake. Something built. My fingers trembled as I touched the corner of the print. Not from weakness, but from the sheer force I was using to keep my control. Dominic, Victoria's voice cracked. Those pictures, he made me, he forced. I finally turned my head slightly. Not enough to look at her, just enough to speak. Don't lie to me. She choked on a sob. I'm not lying. I didn't know he was printing them. I didn't know he printed these, I said quietly, because you posed for them. A broken cry fell from her lips. My father's voice followed softly from behind her. Son, come outside. You don't need to be in there anymore. I ignored them all. I walked deeper into the garage. There were folders scattered on the workbench. My work folders. My ideas. My drafts. My intellectual property. All stamped with digital transfer logs to Bradley's personal laptop. Stolen. Copied. Cataloged. Prepared. Prepared for theft. On the floor, half hidden under a stack of papers, I saw something that made my throat tighten. A USB drive. My USB drive. The one I'd lost months ago and assumed I'd misplaced. I bent down and picked it up, turning it slowly in my fingers. Victoria whimpered behind me. Dominic, I swear I didn't mean for what? I finally turned. Her face was drenched in tears. Her mascara streaked wildly. Her knees were shaking so badly she had to brace herself against the doorframe. For what, Victoria? I asked, voice low. Controlled. Too controlled. For what exactly did you not mean to happen? She shook her head rapidly. I didn't want you to find out like this. Like this. A bitter laugh escaped me. Like what? With your affair displayed like an art exhibit in my own garage? With my stolen work pinned like a damn vision board for your little betrayal project? She covered her mouth, sobbing. My father muttered, Enough. Enough. Let him out of there. He reached toward me, but I stepped away, because now I saw the last part, the part that twisted the knife. Pinned neatly beside the photos was the printed version of my entire sustainable high-rise concept pitch deck, the one only I had access to, the one I hadn't shown Bradley or the team yet, the one that was supposed to debut at the Archer development meeting next month. Except someone had beaten me to it. Someone had dissected it top to bottom. Highlighted areas read, market this as our design. Pitch before Dom presents his draft. Secure patent under Winters and Company. Winters and Company. Bradley Winters. The betrayal had layers. Layers on top of layers. Infidelity. Theft. Sabotage. All quietly blooming behind my back. Nurtured with every fake late-night shift and every he's just a friend reassurance. My chest rose and fell slowly, too evenly. Victoria took a shaky step inside. Dom, please say something. 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 I didn't even know what language my emotions existed in anymore. Something inside me felt like it had shriveled into ash, but the outside of me, the man standing here, only grew colder. Sharper. Focused. I finally spoke quietly. This is a shrine. She blinked through tears. What? This isn't evidence. It's not just chaos. It's not just cheating. I gestured around the room. This is a shrine to everything you two built behind my back. She covered her face again, sobbing harder. I never wanted this, I swear, but she had. Or at least, she had allowed it. The truth was everywhere. Pinned, printed, highlighted. An entire betrayal lay bare. I looked back at the center photo, Bradley, smiling like he'd won something valuable. My chest filled with a calm, so cold it burned. My world didn't explode. It collapsed inward. Quiet. Silent. Precise, like a skyscraper imploding under its own weight. In that ruin, something new formed. Something sharp. Something dangerous. But I didn't speak it. I didn't have to, because everything I needed to know was already here. My world collapsed in silent rage. Chapter 3. Calm is more terrifying than anger. There's a moment in a man's life when fury is so great, so overwhelming, that it burns itself out, and what's left isn't rage. It's quiet, cold, measurable, surgical. That was the calm that settled over me in the garage, the kind of calm that made Victoria stop crying just long enough to stare at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Dominic, please say something," she whispered, voice thin and trembling. I didn't answer, not because I couldn't, but because the moment I opened my mouth, something irreversible might have come out, something that wouldn't benefit me later. So instead, I exhaled once, slow and controlled, and turned away from the wall of betrayal. "Come on," I said softly. She blinked. "Where?" "Outside." My voice was too steady, too even. She froze, her breath hitching. "Dominic, please, I swear." "Victoria," I said, still not looking at her, "stand up." It wasn't a request. It wasn't quite a command either. But she obeyed. Maybe because the silence was scarier than yelling. Maybe because she could feel the air change around me, stiffening, sharpening. Or maybe because she knew exactly what she destroyed. I walked past her out of the garage. She reached for my arm. "I never wanted you to see it," she cried. "I was going to take it all down. I was going to fix it." I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. Her eyes widened. Not because I shoved her. Because I didn't. Gentleness was worse. Calmness was terrifying. My mother stood near the front steps, hands clasped tight. My father stood beside her, his jaw set, watching me like he was afraid to speak. "Son," he began, "maybe you should—" I lifted one hand slightly. He stopped immediately. Even he could feel something was different. Victoria followed behind me, voice cracking. "Dominic, please. Please don't walk away from me. Don't freeze me out. I'll answer anything. I'll tell you everything." "I know," I said quietly. "And I will make sure she did, eventually. But not here. Not now. Not when the police were still parked on my street, and neighbors were peeking through blinds." I turned to Officer Hale, who was lingering awkwardly by the walkway. "Are you finished here?" I asked. He nodded, choosing his words carefully. "If you want us to file a report for the property damage, or anything else, we can proceed." I knew what the anything else meant. I shook my head. "No, there's nothing for you to file." Victoria let out a shaky sigh of relief. It wasn't for her. I simply didn't need the police involved. This was going to be handled my way. Hale nodded. "If you change your mind, call us." He tipped his hat, exchanged a look with my father, a look that said stay close to him tonight, and left. The moment the squad car rolled away, the silence deepened. My mother stepped forward gently. "Dominic, sweetheart, I'm fine," I said. She flinched just slightly, because I said it too calmly, like I was stating the weather, like none of this mattered at all. But the truth was, the calm was a shell around something raw and blinding inside me. I just wasn't letting it out. Victoria reached toward me again, fingers trembling. "Can we please talk inside?" "Please, Domin." "No," she froze. "No," she whispered. I met her eyes for the first time since stepping out of the garage. She gasped softly at whatever she saw in mine. "Go inside," I said quietly. "Pack a bag. One night. I don't care where you stay." Her lip quivered. You're kicking me out?" "Yes. But now would be better than later." Her breath hitched. She turned to my mother for help, but my mother simply lowered her gaze. Even she knew this was beyond rescuing. Victoria swallowed hard, nodding shakily. "Okay, I'll just get my things." She walked toward the house, hugging herself like she was cold. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. "Dominic, talk to us. Don't hold it in." "I'm not holding anything," I said plainly. And that was the truth. Everything was too sharp, too vivid, too immediate to be held. "We can stay tonight," he offered. "Or you can come with—" "I need to be alone." My mother gave me a look, the look only mothers can give, the one that sees through everything, but she didn't argue. "Call us," she said softly. "Please." I nodded once. They left. The house was silent when I walked inside. Victoria was in the bedroom, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag with shaking hands. She turned when she heard me. "Dominic, I never meant to hurt you like this," she choked out. "I swear, things got out of control. It wasn't supposed to, Victoria." She stopped mid-sentence. "I don't want to hear your version tonight." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Then when? When are you going to let me explain?" "When I'm ready," I said. She swallowed. "Are you going to yell at me?" "No." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Are you going to leave me?" "I don't yell," I said simply. She shut her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Because that was not an answer. She zipped her bag, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'll text you," she whispered. I'll give you space." I didn't reply. She hesitated in the doorway, staring at me like she wanted me to stop her. I didn't. Finally, she left, the quiet click of the front door closing behind her echoing through the house like a final verdict. When her car pulled away and the headlights disappeared down the street, the silence became a physical thing, heavy, almost thick. I walked back to the garage. I stood in the middle of the chaos, the photos, the files, the stolen plans, and breathed deeply. Then I began. I took down every note, every printed screenshot, every photo, every blueprint, every USB drive, every file. I spread them out on the floor, on the workbench, on the table. I organized them into piles. I sorted them by date, by timestamp, by origin. I compared email headers. I checked metadata. I traced file transfers. I identified deleted message fragments in printed texts. I matched handwriting samples. I pieced together the entire timeline of their betrayal, not emotionally, but analytically. I worked for hours, methodically, silently. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake, because anger is messy. But revenge? Revenge is tidy, cold, precise. By the time the clock passed midnight, I knew everything. When it started, where they met, what they planned, how long they'd been preparing to strip me of my work and my dignity. The exact day they decided I was expendable, I sat on the concrete floor, surrounded by neatly organized betrayal. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But I made one decision with perfect clarity. I will engineer the perfect revenge. Chapter 4, The First Strike. Quiet documentation. Dominic Reinhardt had always believed that precision was a language. Architects communicated through order, clean lines, measured angles, logical load-bearing choices. And yet, on the morning after discovering the garage of ruin, he found himself speaking a different kind of precision. The precision of vengeance. He sat alone in his home office, lights dimmed, laptop open, hands steady in a way they shouldn't be. Victoria had tried to knock earlier, whispering through the wood like she feared waking a beast. "Dominic, please. Just talk to me." He didn't answer. He simply waited for her footsteps to fade. Then he opened his phone and tapped on the contact he hadn't called in 5 years. Naomi Vale, investigative journalist, professional troublemaker, and someone who owed him a favor. The phone rang only once. "Dominic Reinhardt," Naomi said, voice sharp and alive. "I thought the prodigy architect only calls me when the world is ending." "It is," he replied calmly. A beat of silence. Naomi understood tones. She read people the way he read blueprints. "What happened?" "I need your email," he said. "I'm sending you something." He heard her move on the other side, chair scraping, keyboard clicking. "Send it." Dominic selected the massive folder he had assembled overnight, the screenshots, the stolen CAD files, the private emails between Bradley and Victoria about his project. He pressed send. A long exhale leaked out of him. Not relief, just another measured release of pressure, the kind that kept people from exploding. Naomi whistled through the phone before he'd even spoken again. "Oh, Dominic, this is big." She paused. "This is career-ending big." "For them," he replied. She skimmed. He could hear the pages flipping in her mind. "You're telling me Bradley Winters, golden boy of sustainable construction, stole your design?" "He did more than steal it," Dominic said, leaning back in his chair. "He dissected it, repackaged it, plotted a release timeline ahead of mine. And your wife?" Dominic stared at the far wall. "She gave him access." Naomi didn't gasp. She didn't gasp at anything. "That explains the duplicated timestamps," she muttered. Some of these files were exported from your home network. They wanted full possession. He heard her typing again, fast. You came to the right person. I know. You planning to sue? Go public. Not yet, he said. I need documentation. Structured, chronological, airtight. Naomi let out a low, approving hum. You want this built like a case file. Exactly. And then, Dominic said, I dismantle them. The build begins. Over the next 3 days, Dominic did what he did best. Build. He turned his home office into a war room. Whiteboards covered the walls, each marked with colored lines, arrows, digital timestamps, and printed screenshots. He wore gloves while handling Victoria's printed emails, more for psychological distance than preservation. Every piece of betrayal went into labeled folders. Folder A, unlawful access. Folder B, corporate theft. Folder C, IP violation. Folder D, personal correspondence. Victoria plus Bradley. This last one he opened only when necessary. Whenever he did, his jaw tightened, but his pulse never sped up. Not once. His parents stopped by the second evening. His mother peeked into the office, eyes trembling. Dominic, sweetheart, you haven't slept. I will, he said without looking up. Eventually, his father hovered in the doorway. Son, he said quietly, we know you're hurting, but this calm, it frightens us more than anger would. Dominic turned, meeting his father's gaze evenly. Good, he replied, because anger is emotional. This isn't. His father swallowed hard. Do you need anything? Yes, Dominic said. Space. They left without another word. Naomi's role. Naomi remained a constant presence over call and email. At 2 a.m., she messaged. Found an early patent filing by Bradley. Confirms your design overlaps 62%. At 6 a.m., she emailed. You need off-site backups, preferably international servers. I can connect you. At 11 p.m., she texted. I interviewed someone at Winters Corporation. Rumors say Bradley's preparing a major reveal. He's moving fast. Dominic responded each time with the same tone. Understood. Document it. Add it to the folder. Naomi finally called again on the fourth night, sounding equal parts impressed and unnerved. You're very quiet through all this, she said. Noise doesn't build anything, Dominic replied. This level of calm, I've covered political takedowns, corporate wars, billion-dollar frauds. And even the guilty ones panic. But you, Dominic didn't answer for a moment. Then, gently, you don't panic when you're the one drawing the blueprint, Naomi. She exhaled. Well, she said softly, whatever you're planning, it's going to be devastating. Yes, he said, but only if every piece fits. The legal arsenal. By the end of the week, Dominic had backed up every file to encrypted cloud servers, printed duplicate copies stored in his parents' home safe, purchased 2 new external drives, one hidden in his office, one hidden in his car, logged every suspicious activity from Bradley's company, screenshot every message, every forwarded note, every file transfer, created a full-blown timeline wall that stretched from one end of the room to the other. He even recorded short voice memos. Note, April 12th, Victoria forwarded my Phase 3 sketches to Bradley. She claimed she was sending them for feedback. This was 2 months before Bradley's company presented a similar structure. Note, Bradley visited our home on June 3rd while I was at a conference. Camera logs confirm his entry. Note, I confronted Victoria last month about her sudden interest in my office computer. She claimed she was cleaning. Each memo was precise. Cold. Controlled. He wasn't building a revenge plan. He was assembling a weapon that couldn't miss. The architect of retribution. One night, Naomi called again. Dominic, she said, I need to ask you something off record. Go ahead. Are you sure you're not emotionally compromised? Dominic sat still for a long moment. He looked at the whiteboards, the folders, the years of work, the betrayal smeared across every page. Then he said quietly, Naomi, I'm not angry. Then what are you? I'm calculating. She inhaled sharply. You're scaring me a little. He allowed a faint breath of amusement. Not a laugh, just a shadow of one. Good, he said. That means I'm on the right track. And the plan? She asked. Dominic rose from his chair and scanned his wall of evidence. A professional strike, he said. Precise documentation. Legal traps. Press pressure. I weakened Bradley publicly. And personally? Naomi asked. Dominic's eyes hardened. That comes later. A pause. You're building something, Dominic. Yes, he said. My first strike. And what do you call it? He looked at the open folders, the recorded memos, the printed betrayals. Every piece placed with intention. Structured. Calculated. Precise. The first step, he said, is quiet documentation. And that was where he stopped. Exactly as planned. Chapter 5, Outmaneuvering Bradley. Dominic Reinhardt didn't rush. That was the most dangerous part. Anyone else in a situation would have stormed into boardrooms, ranted, raged, demanded justice. But Dominic's movements were measured, architecturally deliberate. Every action had a load-bearing purpose. Every step carried structural intent. And that's exactly why, at 7 in the morning on a quiet Tuesday, he walked calmly into the marble lobby of Archer Development, one of the fastest-growing real estate powerhouses on the East Coast. No appointment, no entourage, no announcement to the public or even to his own firm. Just Dominic, silent, collected, deadly. The receptionist, a young man who couldn't hide his intrigue, straightened immediately. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Archer Development. Do you have an appointment? Dominic offered a small, polite smile. No, but I believe Mr. Halden will want to see me. The receptionist blinked. Mr. Halden, the CEO? Yes, Dominic said simply, as if requesting a coffee refill. The receptionist hesitated, then typed a quick message into his system, glancing repeatedly at Dominic like he was a rare artifact that had somehow wandered in from a museum. Not even 30 seconds later, his eyes widened. Sir, Mr. Halden will see you right away. Of course he would. Dominic followed an assistant through a glass corridor. Sunlight reflected off the steel beams above, beams he had once dreamed of designing for Archer. A lifetime ago, before betrayal became the load he carried. They reached a private conference room where Thomas Halden, Archer Development CEO, stood waiting in a tailored gray suit. Dominic Reinhardt, Halden said with a broad grin. If you told me yesterday you were stopping by, I'd have cleared my entire day. Dominic shook his hand. Firm grip. Controlled. I needed to visit quietly, he replied. Halden's eyes sharpened at the word quietly. Sit. You have my attention. Dominic took his seat, opened a sleek black folder, and slid a single rendering across the table. Halden leaned in, then froze. Is this new? Halden asked, eyebrows lifting. Yes, Dominic said. A conceptual framework. A new sustainable high-rise model. Halden studied the drawing more closely, the fluid curvature, the solar-integrated facade, the airflow funnels, the processed waste energy system Dominic had built from scratch after the betrayal. It carried the soul of his original project, his stolen one, but none of the exact details. This was version 2.0. Sharper, leaner, stronger. A phoenix designed by a man who intended to rise by burning someone else's wings. Halden's voice dropped to a reverent whisper. Dominic, this is brilliant. I know, Dominic said calmly. And I'm offering Archer the first look. Halden almost laughed. Offering? Dominic, companies fight for your designs. Your firm would kill me if they knew you were here. They don't know, Dominic said. And they won't, until I decide otherwise. Halden looked up slowly. This wasn't normal behavior. This wasn't an architect pitching a project. This was a man preparing a battlefield. Halden leaned back, tapping his pen gently. All right, what's the real story? Dominic didn't flinch. I'm working on a different timeline than my firm right now, he said. And I want Archer's preliminary commitment before I make anything public. You want me to sign on early-stage concept, Halden translated, even before your own company sees it. Correct. That'll raise questions. I'm aware. Halden crossed his arms, searching Dominic's expression for cracks. He found none. So what are you really doing, Dominic? Dominic didn't blink. He didn't twitch. He didn't waver. I'm outmaneuvering someone who's trying to outmaneuver me. Halden's eyebrows shot up. Oh, he asked slowly. Should I be concerned? No, Dominic said simply. But he should. The presentation. Over the next hour, Dominic presented the concept with the same invigorating clarity that had made him a rising star in his field. He moved through his digital models fluidly. The energy cycle system that reduced operational costs by 30%, the structural frame that distributed wind load with impressive efficiency, the vertical gardens designed to double as air filtration towers. Halden watched silently, hands now steepled, absorbing every detail. When the final slide faded, he released a long breath. Dominic, this is not just a high-rise. This is a statement. That's the intention. Halden's lips quirked. And your firm has no idea? None. And Bradley Winters? Halden asked casually, though the name carried tension. Dominic didn't change expression, not even a twitch. Especially him. Halden chuckled under his breath. I've heard rumors he's preparing a big reveal soon. Thought it was strange timing. Dominic just nodded once. I'm beating him to the board. Halden blinked. So this is a race. No, Dominic corrected softly. This is an ambush. Halden sat up straighter. And you're sure you want Archer involved? Archer is the only company with the platform, ethics, and structural freedom to execute this project the way it deserves. Halden grinned wide. You flatter me. I'm being practical. Well then, Halden said, pulling out a drawer, let's talk terms. The agreement. The negotiation didn't take long. Dominic knew exactly what he wanted. Preliminary rights reserved under Archer Development public reveal in early stages. Independent of his current firm protection clauses for intellectual property, a confidentiality agreement shielding the project from leaks. Halden frowned at one line in particular. You want confidentiality from both sides, mine and yours? Yes, Dominic replied. Secrecy is part of the strategy. Halden raised a brow. That sounds like war. It's architecture, Dominic said calmly. Just applied differently. Halden slid the short-term agreement forward. All right, Dominic. I'll play your game. Dominic signed. Halden signed. The partnership, temporary but powerful, was officially forged. And with that, the trap tightened around Bradley Winters without him ever knowing the jaws were closing. The exit. As Dominic rose to leave, Halden stopped him. One question, Dominic. He turned. Is this personal? Dominic answered without hesitation. No. If it were personal, I would be acting recklessly. A pause. This is professional. Entirely. Halden studied him, then nodded slowly. You're a dangerous man when you're calm. Dominic offered a faint smile. That's what everyone keeps telling me. He left the building with the signed agreement tucked inside his coat, the morning sun bouncing off the glass towers around him. Anyone watching him walk would see a man with perfect posture and unreadable eyes. Not triumphant, not nervous, just precise. Inside his pocket, his phone buzzed with a message from Naomi. Bradley just confirmed a major press event next month. He thinks he's about to win. Dominic slid the phone back into his coat. Good. Let Bradley think that. Let him celebrate early. Because while Bradley Winters confidently marched toward his big reveal, completely unaware, he was walking straight into a professional ambush. Chapter 6. Playing with Victoria's mind. Dominic did not run into Victoria by accident. He had studied her habits with the same precision he once reserved for calculating structural loads. She frequented a specific cafe on Fairview Street every Wednesday morning, latte with oat milk, always at a corner table, always scrolling through her messages with a nervous thumb. Since the exposure in the garage, she had gone quiet, avoiding the house, avoiding him, avoiding the echo of her own guilt. Today, Dominic would give her something new to fear. He waited until she was halfway through her drink before he stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed sharply. Victoria looked up and froze. Her lips parted. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face with such speed that the barista glanced over in concern. Dominic pretended not to notice her reaction. He didn't stiffen. He didn't glare. He simply approached the counter with a calm smile, like any normal man starting his day. Large black coffee, he told the barista. No sugar. His voice was steady. Too steady. Victoria's shaking hands clutched her cup. She tried to look anywhere but at him, but her gaze kept darting back, as if she feared he might explode, or worse, say nothing at all. When the barista handed him the cup, Dominic thanked him softly, turned, and met her eyes directly. He smiled. Not wide, not warm, just controlled. Victoria, he said pleasantly. Good morning. She stood so quickly her chair screeched across the floor. Dominic, you shouldn't, I didn't know you come here. I don't usually. He walked over to her table with unhurried steps. But I was in the neighborhood. Her breathing hitched. He gestured to the empty chair across from her. May I? Victoria hesitated, like she was deciding if she should run or fall to her knees. Then slowly she nodded. Dominic sat, and the real performance began. The unexpected kindness. Victoria tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to gather herself. Dominic, about everything. He lifted a hand gently. No apologies right now. Not here. She blinked. Not the reaction she had prepared for. I don't want you overwhelmed, he continued calmly. We've both been through a lot. Emotions have been messy. Messy, a word said without bitterness, without tension. Victoria stared at him like she was looking at a stranger. Dominic, I expected you to be angry. I thought you'd scream at me the next time we saw each other. He sipped his coffee, unbothered. Anger doesn't solve anything. The softness of his tone made her swallow hard. I'm not saying I'm okay, he added, but I'm processing. Her eyes glistened. Processing, she whispered. After what I did, he looked at her with a gentle, almost sympathetic expression. Victoria, people make mistakes. A slow pause. And sometimes they happen for reasons we don't fully understand. Her lips trembled. Dominic, I don't deserve that kind of kindness. Maybe not, he said simply. But I'd rather choose peace than blame. The sentence hit her like a slap. She wasn't prepared for this version of him. The soft-voiced one, the steady one, the one who looked at her like the betrayal hadn't gutted him. It was disarming, terrifying, exactly as intended, letting her drown in her own guilt. Victoria leaned forward, voice cracking. Dominic, I swear I never meant to hurt you like this. I was confused. Bradley? Dominic didn't flinch at the name. Victoria, he said gently. You don't need to explain. Really? Her breath stuttered. But I want to. You deserve to understand why. I don't need to understand the why, he said, interrupting softly. I only need to understand what comes next. That made her blink in confusion. What comes next? Dominic smiled faintly. Healing. Moving forward. Forgiveness, maybe. Her eyes widened in pure disbelief. You would forgive me? He shrugged, as though it were a small, unimportant thing. I haven't ruled it out. Victoria covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders began to shake. This wasn't the Dominic she had rehearsed arguments for. This wasn't the man who punched walls or yelled or demanded answers. This was worse. Infinitely worse. He was kind, understanding, warm. She couldn't handle it. Dominic, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. He took another calm sip of coffee. I just want you to be okay. Her face crumpled. She had expected hatred. She had expected ice. She had expected fire. But not mercy. Mercy made her unravel, playing the long game. Dominic leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully, not with tenderness, but with the same analytical focus he used when evaluating a complex structure for hidden weaknesses. And Victoria had many. He could see them forming by the second. Guilt twisting deeper with every calm word he offered, confusion spreading, because she couldn't categorize his reaction, fear blooming, because his composure didn't make sense, doubt creeping in, doubt about herself, and most importantly, doubt about Bradley. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Dominic, is this real? Are you actually okay? Not yet, he answered truthfully. But I will be. She looked down, ashamed. I don't know if Bradley and I will be okay. Dominic's eyebrow lifted slightly. Oh, she shook her head, exhaling shakily. He's been different lately. Cold, distracted, secretive. I don't know what he's thinking anymore. Dominic hid his smile behind his cup. Relationships built in chaos rarely last, he said with a sympathetic tone. It's hard to trust the foundation. Her head snapped up. Are you saying you think Bradley isn't trustworthy? He gave the smallest shrug in the world. I think, he said gently, that hurting one person makes it easier to hurt another. Victoria sat completely still, silent, staring, processing. A tiny crack formed in her expression, barely visible, but structurally significant. Dominic continued quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. In life, people reveal who they truly are when things get difficult. If he ever treated you the way you both treated me, I'd hope you'd walk away. Her breath hitched. Dominic, he wouldn't do that. That's good, he said with a soft nod. I hope you're right. But the uncertainty had already lodged inside her. Exactly as designed. The finishing touch. Victoria finally found her voice again. Dominic, what do you want from all this? From me? He looked at her with gentle clarity. I want you to be happy, Victoria. Truly. She stared at him, breath trembling, completely undone by kindness she didn't deserve. I don't understand how you can be so calm. Dominic smiled faintly. Calm helps me think. She swallowed. About what? About what comes next? He stood, slowly, smoothly, powerfully. Thank you for the conversation, he said politely. It helped more than you know. She looked devastated. Dominic, please don't be a stranger. He gave her the mildest, vaguest, most infuriatingly gentle nod. Then he walked out of the cafe without a single backward glance. Outside, he slipped on his sunglasses, expression sharpening. Behind him, through the reflection of the glass, he saw Victoria collapse back in her chair, panicked, confused, doubting everything. Good. The cracks had begun, and Dominic Reinhardt watched them form. Chapter 7. The Rumor Bomb. Dominic Reinhardt read the notification on his phone with a slow, calculating breath. Naomi, you ready for the spark? He typed back. Dominic, light it. And with that single message, the next stage of the plan began. The cafe around him buzzed with quiet morning chatter, clinking mugs, soft indie music, murmured conversations. Dominic sat alone in the far corner, posture relaxed, but his eyes focused sharply on the phone in his hand. Across the city, in a cramped office stuffed with case files and camera equipment, Naomi Vale was already at work. Naomi's side of the war. Naomi Vale wasn't a typical journalist. She was a bloodhound for corporate lies, a hunter of fraud. Today, however, she wasn't chasing a story. She was building a weapon. She leaned back in her chair, cracked her knuckles, and pulled up her message drafts. Months of experience made her opening strike feel effortless. First, she selected her list of prime industry contacts. Architects hungry for gossip, contractors with loose lips, urban development analysts, 2 well-known architecture bloggers, 1 notorious Twitter account that loved leaks. She typed a single line, vague enough to avoid accusation, but pointed enough to cause uproar. Hearing whispers. Bradley Winters preparing a major architectural breakthrough. Big reveal soon. No mention of Dominic. No mention of the design. Just a seed. Then she sent it. 1 message to each contact. Then she sat back, grabbed her coffee, and smiled. The spark was lit. The first reactions. Naomi watched the responses roll in. Contact 1. A breakthrough? Didn't peg Winters as the type. Contact 2. Keep me updated. His last project was mediocre. Blogger. Send deets. Analyst. Archer Development, maybe? They've been sniffing around that kind of project. And then, the best one for a rival firm's architect. Winters? Breakthrough? Not unless he found someone else's brain. Naomi chuckled. Her hands moved fast. Her instincts even faster. She wrote back casually, just sharing what I heard, never confirming, never denying, always letting the curiosity spread on its own. Within 10 minutes, the rumor had left her hands and entered the bloodstream of the industry. The buzz begins. By noon, Dominic was in a taxi when his phone buzzed. A colleague from his firm had texted, "Have you seen this? What's Bradley cooking?" He smiled slightly. The driver noticed the grin in the rearview mirror. "Good news, sir. Not for the right person," Dominic replied quietly. When he stepped out at his next meeting, 2 more messages arrived. From an engineer. "Bradley's been quiet lately. Think he got a big project." From a consulting partner. "Hearing rumors he's about to shock the industry." True. Dominic slipped his phone back into his jacket, expression unreadable. He hadn't said a single word to anyone. Naomi had done all the work, and the industry was taking the bait beautifully, fueling the speculation. Meanwhile, Naomi wasn't done. Not even close. Rumors were like fire. You didn't just light them, you fed them oxygen. She released the next wave. A simple tweet from her anonymous burner account, known widely for accurate leaks. At Urban Whispers, hearing chatter, a major design presentation incoming. Sustainable high-rise. Could reshape the field. Name involved. Winters. She added a few hashtags. Architecture, sustainability, big reveal within minutes. 67 likes, 32 retweets, 14 comments, mostly variations of Winters? No way. He's been too quiet lately. About time he did something significant. Source. How credible is this? Naomi monitored reactions, adding just enough fuel to make it grow without making it obvious. Replying to one skeptic, she wrote, not confirming anything, just saying I heard from someone close to the project. That phrase, someone close to the project, was a spark poured on a dry grass. The speculation doubled. The circle closes in. By late afternoon, the rumor had crossed borders. A London-based architecture blogger posted, is American architect Bradley Winters about to drop a career-defining project? Then a Dubai design newsletter forwarded the U.S. chatter. Sources indicate Winters preparing a major reveal in Q4. The industry was buzzing. People Dominic hadn't spoken to in years were now messaging him. One coworker asked, you used to work closely with Bradley, right? Any truth to these rumors? Dominic responded with a simple, no idea, perfectly vague, perfectly harmless, perfectly aligned with the plan. Bradley feels the pressure. At that same hour, Bradley Winters sat at his desk, scrolling through his phone with a deepening frown. Breakthrough. Major reveal. Winters preparing something huge. His ego throbbed, half flattered, half alarmed. Who the hell started this? He muttered. He reread a tweet, brow furrowing. He had a big reveal planned. Yes, but not this big. The design he intended to present wasn't even fully finalized. And certainly nothing he would ever call groundbreaking unless he exaggerated, which he often did. But this rumor created expectations. High ones. Dangerous ones. He began pacing. If people expected a breakthrough, then maybe he should call his upcoming project one. Maybe he should lean into the hype. Maybe this was his chance to look legendary. He texted Victoria. Bradley, people talking about my presentation? Victoria. Yeah, it's everywhere. Did you tell anyone? Bradley. Not a soul. Victoria. Then how did it leak? Bradley. No idea. But maybe this is good for us. He stared at the words good for us a moment, unsure why something felt off. But Dominic watched this unfold from afar, reading every shift of the public narrative like reading blueprints. Everything was going according to plan. The amplification. Naomi called Dominic that evening. Phase 1 is complete, she announced. The rumor is officially viral. Dominic leaned against the glass wall of his apartment, city lights reflecting in his eyes. How much traction? A lot. Twitter is buzzing. LinkedIn discussions are heating up. A few architecture forums have threads speculating what Bradley's new breakthrough might be. Dominic let out a soft breath of satisfaction. And the journalists? He asked. Oh, they're feasting, Naomi replied. I fed two of them a hint that the project might involve sustainable vertical ecosystems. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Did they believe it? Instantly. She grinned through the phone. They're running theories faster than I can read them. This was the beauty of rumor engineering. Once seated, it grew naturally, without Dominic or Naomi pushing, without them needing to nudge further. It had become a living organism, a storm building over Bradley Winters' head. The last touch. The final push was subtle. Naomi added one last tweet. At Urban Whispers, if Winters really has what insiders claim, he might redefine sustainable architecture this year. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't dramatic. It was just enough to make the industry expect something revolutionary, which meant when Bradley eventually stood on that stage with a design almost identical to Dominic's early pitch project, the suspicion of plagiarism would land on him. Hard. Chapter 8, The Archer Development Showdown. Bradley Winters strutted into the Archer Development boardroom like a peacock in a tailored suit. Chest puffed, smile polished, steps too confident for a man who didn't know he was walking into a buzz saw. Dominic sat at the long glass table among the executives, legs crossed, posture relaxed, a faint polite smile on his lips, because the show he'd engineered was about to begin. The screen flickered on. Bradley cleared his throat, spreading his arms. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the future of sustainable metropolitan towers. The Ether Spire. The first slide appeared, then the second, then the third. The room shifted. Archer's executives leaned forward, eyes narrowing, glances bouncing around the table. One of them, a senior development strategist, slowly turned to look at Dominic with a sharp, almost surgical stare. Because the design Bradley was presenting was not just similar to Dominic's earlier submission. It was the same skeleton, the same curvature, the same energy-yielding exostructure, even the same placement of the sky gardens. Bradley continued, oblivious. The unique atrium design allows for. Dominic watched an executive whisper to another, then another. Someone scribbled something onto a notepad. Someone else's brows shot all the way up. Bradley clicked to the next slide. And as you can see, the lateral support beams, Bradley, one executive finally cut in. Could you go back to slide 7? Bradley frowned, irritated but compliant. Of course. Slide 7 returned. The room fell into a heavy, acidic silence. Dominic hid his smile by tapping a pen against the table. The executive nodded slowly. This looks familiar. Bradley stiffened. Familiar how? Another executive added. It resembles the conceptual framework of Reinhardt's proposal we saw last week. Bradley's jaw tightened. Dominic looked up from his notes, raising an eyebrow in theatrical surprise. Oh, I hadn't noticed. But his calm tone, the effortless innocence, only deepened the suspicion swirling around Bradley. Bradley's voice broke at the edges. Well, Dominic's concept and mine share roots, of course. We've known each other for years. We brainstormed together long ago. So naturally, of course there might be overlaps. He gestured wildly, like a man trying to swat away invisible bees. Architecture is a collaborative. Dominic gently placed his pen down. Bradley. The room turned toward him. Dominic smiled, warm, reassuring, generous. I want to make something very clear. Bradley gulped. Bradley and I have shared ideas since we were 20. We've exchanged sketches, prototypes, concepts. Sometimes his ideas find echoes in mine, sometimes mine in his. Dominic leaned back, voice steady and impossibly gracious. So, if any similarities exist between my pitch and his, they likely come from those old creative conversations. A ripple of confusion swept across the table. Bradley stared at Dominic like he'd suddenly started speaking another language. Dominic added softly, and I don't believe he copied anything. There, silence, the kind that cracked nerves like thin ice. Several executives exchanged looks, this time not with suspicion toward Dominic, but with sharpened eyes on Bradley, because if Dominic wasn't accusing him, then why did Bradley look like someone who'd been caught red-handed? Bradley's throat worked visibly as he tried to swallow. Victoria, who had quietly slipped in halfway through the pitch, invited by Bradley to support him, stood in the corner, pale as paper. Her hands clutched her bag, so tightly her knuckles were white. Dominic, she whispered, barely audible. Bradley gave her a warning glance. But Dominic looked at her, expression soft, too soft, and smiled politely. Victoria, I'm glad you're here. The temperature in the room dropped 3 degrees. Dominic turned back to the executives. In fact, I'd be happy to collaborate with Bradley further, refine ideas, bring our expertise together like the old days. Bradley stared at him like he'd just grown horns. One of the executives cleared his throat. We appreciate the camaraderie, but the similarities are undeniable. We'll need to conduct an internal review. Bradley's breath hitched. Review? What review? There's no plagiarism, Dominic just said. Dominic held up a hand, gentle, patient. Bradley, he said, calm down. They're only being thorough. Bradley's eyes darted around the room, like a trapped animal, realizing the cage door had clicked shut. Victoria shifted uncomfortably, whispering, Brad, sit down. He didn't. He couldn't. His foot tapped anxiously, hands trembling slightly against the table. Dominic's voice carried a kind softness that had razor edges hidden beneath. I think we can resolve this peacefully. No tension, no accusations. We're friends, after all. Victoria's gaze flicked between the two men, her breathing uneven. She knew something was wrong. Bradley knew something was wrong. Everyone knew something was wrong. But only Dominic knew exactly how wrong it was going to get. The meeting ended with stiff handshakes and executives whispering amongst themselves. Bradley didn't shake Dominic's hand. He simply stormed out, Victoria rushing after him. Dominic took his time packing up his notes. The boardroom emptied until he stood alone in the vast glass and steel chamber, the city lights glowing behind him. He allowed himself one quiet, satisfied exhale. The trap was working better than expected. Outside the building, Bradley paced furiously near the sidewalk, hands in his hair. What the hell was that, Vic? Why would he defend me? Why would he pretend nothing happened? It makes me look... Bradley, Victoria hissed. Lower your voice. Dominic stepped out of the building. Both turned immediately. Victoria stiffened. Bradley tried to compose himself, tugging on his coat, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. Dominic approached with an easy stride. Bradley, Victoria. Neither replied. Dominic placed his hands casually in his pockets. I enjoyed the presentation. Lie. I think it has potential. Lie. And I think we should talk. Victoria swallowed. Talk? About what? Dominic's smile broadened just a fraction. About working together. Like old times. Like we used to. Bradley frowned, suspicious and rattled. What? Dominic stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough. Because collaboration is healthier than competition. Victoria's breath caught. Bradley flinched. Dominic's gaze hardened beneath the friendly facade, just for a heartbeat, just long enough for Victoria to notice and instinctively step back. Then he softened again. I'd love to have both of you over, he said warmly. My apartment. Tonight or tomorrow, whenever works. Let's realign. Work through things. Reconnect. Victoria's voice trembled. You want us to come over? Dominic nodded. As friends. As colleagues. A pause. As history. Bradley said nothing. He couldn't. Dominic flashed one final polite smile. Well then, I'll text you both the details. And with that, he walked off down the street, calm, composed, untouchable, leaving Bradley and Victoria standing together, unsettled, paranoid, spiraling. Exactly as he intended. Chapter 9. The Apartment Trap. Dominic Reinhardt's apartment was quiet when Bradley and Victoria arrived, the city lights casting angular shadows across the polished floors and modern furnishings. The air smelled faintly of cedar and the faint tang of freshly printed paper. Everything was immaculate, intentional, calculated, intimidating in its serenity. It was a home that belonged to a man who could control everything in his life, including the chaos others had caused. Victoria entered first, heels clicking lightly against the hardwood. Her gaze flicked nervously around the room, drinking in the orderly calm, the towering bookshelves, the strategically placed art. She didn't look at Dominic yet. She didn't dare. Bradley followed behind, shoulders tense, jaw tight, muttering under his breath. Why does it always feel like he's 10 steps ahead, Vic? Victoria's hand trembled against the back of the couch. I don't know. We shouldn't be here. Not like this. Dominic appeared from the hallway, calm as ever, carrying a sleek leather folder under one arm. He smiled politely, the kind of smile that disarmed casual acquaintances but sent a chill through those who knew him too well. Welcome, he said softly, gesturing toward the dining table where 2 chairs had been pulled out. Please sit. I thought we could collaborate as discussed. Bradley sank into the chair first, wary, eyes darting to Dominic. Collaborate? After everything? Really? Dominic set the folder on the table with deliberate care. The leather creaked under his touch. He slid it across to Bradley. Exactly. Collaboration requires transparency. Victoria hesitated before sitting, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Transparency? She repeated. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. Dominic opened the folder, revealing neatly organized packets and flash drives nestled inside foam slots. He didn't rush. He simply placed each item in front of them. Flash drives labeled with innocuous code names. Printed emails stacked by date. Photos, some casual, some incriminating. Bradley's eyes narrowed immediately, instinctively recognizing the severity of what he saw. "What is all this?" he demanded, voice rising. Dominic looked at him with unshakable composure. "Evidence. A full accounting of your actions, Victoria's involvement, and the professional misconduct that cannot be ignored." Victoria's face turned pale. She glanced at Bradley, panic rising in her chest. "Brad, what is he talking about?" Dominic gestured calmly to one of the flash drives. "This," he said, "contains the photographic record of the affair." Bradley's face twisted. "You. How did you collect it over time?" Dominic replied evenly. "Nothing is missing. Every interaction, every betrayal, documented." Victoria gasped, covered her mouth. She looked at Bradley, as though searching for answers. "Bradley, is this true?" He avoided her gaze, swallowed hard, muttering, "It's complicated." Dominic's eyes remained steady. "Complicated? Perhaps. But facts are facts." He tapped another folder. "Here are the stolen design files. Your attempt to appropriate my intellectual property, clearly time-stamped and traceable." Bradley's fist clenched on the table. "This isn't, you can't, these are private communications." Dominic leaned forward slightly, voice soft yet merciless. "Private, yes, but actionable. And you should have considered the consequences before taking them." Victoria flinched at the cold precision. "Dom, please, you don't have to do this," she whispered. Dominic's gaze softened briefly, a calculated flicker of empathy. "I do, because you've left me no choice." He opened a third folder and slid it across. Emails mocking him, ridiculing his ideas, laughing at his absence, proof of Bradley's arrogance and Victoria's complicity. Bradley's jaw dropped. Dominic paused for effect, then tapped a fourth flash drive. "And lastly, the structural misconduct files from your previous projects, Bradley. Buildings signed off despite hidden flaws. Evidence of negligence that could cost lives and land you in prison." Bradley's face drained of color. "You've been keeping this?" "How? Why?" "Preparedness," Dominic said simply. "I keep records. Every risk, every betrayal. You should know that by now." Victoria's voice wavered. "Dom, this is too much." "Please." Dominic leaned back, steepling his fingers on the table. Calm. Impeccably calm. The sort of calm that crushed egos more effectively than shouting ever could. He looked first at Bradley. "Now, you have options." Bradley's fists were still clenching the table, his chest rising and falling with quick, uneven breaths. "Options? What options?" Dominic's tone was quiet, deliberate, surgical. "You can sign over all claims, all intellectual property, all assets tied to the stolen designs. Confess publicly if necessary. Leave the country. Disappear from the industry. All of it." Bradley's eyes widened in disbelief. "And if I don't?" Dominic leaned forward, expression unchanged, voice calm as a metronome. "Then I release everything. The affair, the stolen designs, the emails mocking me, and the structural negligence records. Publicly. To the press, the authorities, your clients. Everything. Bradley, that choice would not only ruin you professionally, it could land you behind bars." Victoria shrank back in her chair, her hands clutched at the folder in front of her. "Dom, we can't." Dominic's gaze shifted to her, soft yet unwavering. "And you, Victoria, have a decision too. Continue this charade with Bradley, or step away and reclaim your life while protecting yourself as much as possible." Bradley shook his head, voice cracking. "You can't do this. You don't. We can't." Dominic's expression remained neutral, almost polite. "I can, and I will if necessary. But I am giving you both a chance to walk away intact. That is the generosity of precision." Victoria's eyes welled with tears. Bradley's breathing quickened. He looked at the flash drives as if they were live grenades, ready to detonate. Dominic opened the last folder with a calm flourish. "Everything you have done is documented. Everything you try to hide has a record. The choice is simple." He tapped the folders lightly. "Sign everything over and vanish quietly. Or face exposure and burn together." The room was silent. The hum of the city outside, the subtle ticking of a clock on the wall, even the rustle of papers as Victoria's hand shook, everything amplified the tension. Bradley's face paled further, eyes darting from Dominic to Victoria, then back to the table. His mind raced, adrenaline spiking as the weight of the ultimatum settled like concrete around him. Victoria bit her lip, her fingers trembling as she touched the edge of the leather folder. Her gaze flitted to Dominic, then to Bradley, then back again, mind spinning with fear, guilt, and the dawning realization that their world had collapsed perfectly into Dominic's control. Dominic watched them both without blinking, without raising his voice, without an ounce of hesitation. Calm, precise, terrifying. And with that, he left the choice entirely in their hands. Sign everything over and vanish, or burn together, exactly as it was intended. Chapter 10, Collapse of the Betrayers. The apartment was silent except for the subtle hum of the city outside, a low, unrelenting pulse that seemed to echo the tension inside. Dominic Reinhardt sat at the head of the dining table, hands steepled, eyes calm as a still lake, watching Bradley and Victoria like a predator observing prey trapped in a cage they had willingly walked into. Victoria's hands shook as she stared at the folders before her. The flash drives, the emails, the photos, it was all there. Every misstep, every betrayal, every lie captured with perfect precision. She pressed her palms to her face and shivered. Dom, please, I can't, she whispered, voice trembling. This is too much. Dominic tilted his head slightly, expression composed, almost paternal. Victoria, the evidence is already here. Ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. What you decide now will define the next chapter of your life. Bradley, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, attempting to mask the fear creeping into his chest with bravado. He laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You think you can scare me? I'm not signing anything. This is bluff. You can't possibly. Dominic cut him off with a single raised hand. Calm, measured, unyielding. Bradley, I assure you, this is not a bluff. Every file, every email, every photograph, verifiable, time-stamped, undeniable. You know it, I know it, and soon, everyone else will know it if you choose to resist. Bradley's jaw tightened. He glanced at Victoria, seeking her support, but found only wide, terrified eyes. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Brad, maybe we should, don't, he snapped, but even his voice lacked conviction now. Dominic shifted in his chair, leaning forward slightly, letting the weight of his presence fill the room. You've built your defense on luck and secrecy, both of which have failed. You thought I wouldn't see, wouldn't record, wouldn't anticipate. But I did. And now the question is simple. Will you accept the terms I offer, or face the consequences of exposure? Victoria swallowed hard, tears spilling down her cheeks. I can't believe this. I didn't think. Dominic's gaze softened fractionally, the barest flicker of empathy crossing his features. No one forced your choices, Victoria. But now, you must live with them, or surrender control to me. Bradley stood abruptly, knocking his chair back with a sharp scrape against the floor. This is insane. You can't do this. You. Dominic's calm voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. Bradley, sit. Bradley froze, fists still clenched, realizing that for all his bluster, he was trapped. Every angle he had counted on, every potential ally, every shred of leverage gone. Dominic had orchestrated this with precision. Even now, Bradley could see no escape. Victoria's shoulders shook as she pressed her hands to her face, stifling sobs. Brad, we have no choice, she whispered, the words barely audible. We have to. Bradley's eyes darted between Dominic's steady gaze and Victoria's crumpled form. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, the cracks that had been forming for months, since the garage, since the exposure of their betrayal, became impossible to deny. He sank back in his chair, defeated, and muttered under his breath, Fine. I'll do it. Just tell me what I have to sign. Dominic nodded slightly, the faintest hint of satisfaction crossing his features. Everything must be formalized. Company shares, design rights, all intellectual property. Legal documentation will transfer control completely. Once signed, you leave this city, this country, in this industry. Vanish. That is the first path. The second path. He paused, letting the silence stretch, allowing the weight of inevitability to settle on them. The second path ensures that all of your actions, all your secrets, will become public record. Exposure to the press, to authorities, to every client and associate. There is no mitigation, no retreat, no mercy. You burn together. Victoria's tears flowed freely now. She covered her face, shoulders shaking with helpless sobs. I can't go back to that life. I can't, Dom. Please. Dominic's voice was calm, almost gentle as he laid out the papers and pen for Bradley. Sign, and the first path is yours. Refuse, and the second becomes inevitable. The choice is yours entirely. Bradley's hands hovered over the pen, trembling. He glanced at Victoria, whose face was pale, ghostly in the soft lamplight, tears streaking her makeup. His chest heaved, and for a long moment, he simply stared at the documents, unable to speak. Dominic's calm, unblinking gaze held him there, unrelenting. Decision, he said softly, almost conversationally. Bradley exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Fine, he muttered. I'll sign. Just stop this. Dominic slid the first stack of papers toward him. Begin there. Sign the transfer of company shares and intellectual property. Once complete, the departure instructions will be in the final page. Bradley's hand shook as he lifted the pen and began signing. One signature, then another, each stroke a silent admission of defeat, each loop of ink sealing the collapse of everything he had built through deceit. Victoria watched him, silent, her own tears continuing to fall. When Bradley finished, Dominic turned to her. Victoria, your financial safety is no longer guaranteed. Accept the consequences of your actions, or the records I hold will ensure exposure. She nodded slowly, trembling. I understand, she whispered. She knew there was no other way. Dominic collected the signed documents and slid them into a secure folder. The pen was placed deliberately on top, the finality of it echoing in the quiet apartment. He allowed himself a brief, controlled exhale, as if the tension in the room had been a tangible weight he had now lifted. Bradley slumped back in his chair, exhausted, his shoulders sagging. I can't believe. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, voice barely above a whisper. It's over, I guess. Dominic's composure remained flawless. He did not celebrate, did not gloat. Instead, he retrieved his laptop and inserted one of the flash drives containing all evidence of their betrayal. With deliberate care, he encrypted the files and prepared a secure transmission. He sent the copy to Naomi Vale, ensuring that the evidence existed in multiple locations, irretrievable and undeniable if ever needed. Even now, Dominic was building a permanent advantage, a final layer of control over the chaos they had created. Naomi replied instantly. Naomi, received, backed up, locked, permanent leverage confirmed. Dominic allowed himself a faint nod, the faintest flicker of satisfaction crossing his face. Not joy, not anger. Satisfaction, architectural, structural, precise. Everything in its proper place. He turned back to the room. Bradley sat defeated, Victoria resigned. The collapse of both, their pride, their alliances, their carefully constructed deceptions, was complete. The equilibrium of Dominic's world had been restored. The betrayers reduced to shadows of the men and women they once believed themselves to be. He collected the folders, closing each with methodical precision. The room smelled faintly of paper, ink, and fear, a scent Dominic would remember forever. Outside, the city continued to pulse with life, oblivious to the silent, calculated justice that had been executed within the walls of one apartment. Inside, Dominic allowed himself a slow exhale. Every move, every layer of preparation, had culminated in this precise moment. Victoria would lose her financial safety. Bradley would vanish from the industry and leave the country. And Dominic had ensured permanent leverage by sending the files to Naomi. No loose ends remained. The collapse of the betrayers was total. Everything was finally under control. Chapter 11, A City That Stands Because He Didn't Break. Months passed like the slow turning of architectural blueprints, deliberate and inevitable. The city around Dominic Reinhardt evolved, unaware of the private war that had raged months earlier, unaware that the man whose designs shaped its skyline had been betrayed, beaten, and nearly broken. But Dominic had not faltered. Every calculated step, every measured pause, every moment of calm had led to this, a triumph built on strategy, patience, and an unshakable refusal to yield. The final steel beams of his new tower gleamed in the morning sun, reflecting the city like a mirror of glass and ambition. Every window was aligned with precision. Every corner, every edge, a statement of discipline, vision, and defiance. The tower wasn't just a building. It was a monument, an answer to betrayal, an ode to resilience. Dominic walked the construction site one last time, his boots crunching on the gravel of the observation deck. Workers moved below, unaware that their labor was part of a story that stretched far beyond concrete and steel. Dominic inspected the final touches, mentally noting the placement of every structural element, the orientation of the vertical gardens, the airflow channels designed for optimal sustainability. Every detail executed flawlessly. Mr. Reinhardt called the lead engineer, hurrying up the temporary stairwell. The inspection is complete. City Council approved. The ribbon cutting is scheduled for next week. This is going to be huge. Dominic nodded, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Good work, all of you. Every bolt, every beam, it matters. Remember that. The engineer nodded, eyes wide with admiration. We've never seen a design executed this cleanly, sir. The city is going to remember this one. Dominic's gaze drifted upward, following the silhouette of the building against the sky. He smiled faintly, not a smile of arrogance, but of satisfaction. Years of betrayal, heartbreak, and meticulous planning had culminated in this moment. The tower stood as if it had grown from the earth itself, solid, enduring, unshakable. The world moves on. News outlets praised the tower before it had even opened its doors. Articles ran internationally. Reinhardt's sustainable vision transformed skyline, the architectural marvel of the decade. Dominic Reinhardt sets new standards for vertical cities. Social media buzzed with awe and speculation. Every post, every headline, every mention reinforced the magnitude of Dominic's work, uncompromised, untainted by the deceit that had once threatened to ruin him. Meanwhile, across oceans and borders, Bradley Winters had not fared as well. A brief photograph surfaced online, grainy, distant, capturing a lone man standing on the cliffs of Portugal, staring at the sea, thin and worn. His suit, once sharp and commanding, hung loose. The once celebrated architect was reduced to obscurity, his career evaporated, his pride shattered. He walked the streets with no purpose, his past victories meaningless against the weight of exposure and exile. Victoria Reinhardt filed for divorce quietly but publicly. Social pages noted the split. Gossip columns chronicled her financial loss, and professional circles whispered of her missteps and betrayal. The woman who had once held so much power over Dominic's personal life now watched her world collapse, her security dismantled, her name tarnished. She moved from one apartment to another, attempting to regain normalcy. But everywhere she went, she could feel the shadow of Dominic's calm, methodical retaliation lingering, like the echo of a structure built too solid to ignore. Dominic's moment. The day of the grand opening arrived, and Dominic ascended the spiral staircase to the rooftop alone. The city stretched before him, veins of light running through streets, avenues, and alleys. The hum of life, the pulse of urban energy, it all seemed to pause for a moment under the weight of the skyscraper he had conceived, designed, and protected. He leaned on the glass railing, hands folded, eyes scanning the horizon. Below, construction crews moved out the final equipment. The sunlight reflected off the building's glass like a crown of fire. He breathed in the crisp air, filling his lungs with the scent of concrete, metal, and victory. A soft wind brushed against his face, and for a moment, Dominic allowed himself to reflect, not on the betrayal, not on the revenge, not on the painstakingly orchestrated downfall of those who had wronged him, but on what had endured. His vision, his work, his integrity. Every step he had taken, every calculated decision had been for this. A city that now stood stronger because he had not broken. He let himself smile, a quiet, private smile. He thought of the files he had sent to Naomi Vale, a perfect safety net, a permanent guarantee that the truth could never be undone. The power of leverage, the satisfaction of complete control. It was there, yet Dominic didn't dwell on it. His focus was on creation, not destruction. A light beep from his phone pulled him from contemplation. A message from Naomi. Naomi, tower coverage is phenomenal. Everything is going your way. Even the doubters are silent. Dominic typed back with a single word. Dominic. Perfect. He pocketed the phone and looked out over the city again. Below, people moved like ants, unaware of the silent battles that had occurred to ensure the structures they inhabited were sound, not just physically, but morally. Every betrayal had been addressed, every threat neutralized, every risk contained. Reflection at the top. Dominic's gaze traveled to the horizon, where the sun began to dip behind distant skyscrapers. The light caught on the edges of his building, illuminating the vertical gardens, the sky bridges, the rooftop terraces, all designed not merely to impress but to endure. He thought of Bradley, now wandering Portugal, penniless and erased from the architectural world. He thought of Victoria, divorced, publicly humiliated, her life rearranged in the aftermath of betrayal. And he thought of himself, standing on the pinnacle of all he had built, untouched by the chaos others had tried to impose. Some structures, he realized, could not be rebuilt until the old, unstable ones were removed. Some systems, some relationships, some lives demanded demolition before anything stronger could rise. And now, looking at the city he had helped shape, Dominic understood the truth. He was a builder in every sense, of towers, of strategies, and of his own life. He raised his chin slightly, the wind tugging at his hair, and whispered quietly, almost to himself, "Some structures must be destroyed, so stronger ones can rise." Below, the city pulsed with energy, alive and oblivious. The streets, the towers, the avenues, all owed their current order to the man who had refused to break. Dominic Reinhardt stayed on the rooftop, watching, breathing, and letting the satisfaction settle deep within him. The skyscraper was complete. The betrayers were gone. The city, resilient and magnificent, stood because he had endured. And he, standing tall above it all, knew that true strength, like true architecture, was born from precision, patience, and an unflinching refusal to crumble. He exhaled, letting the wind carry away the tension, the memories, the ghosts of deceit, leaving only the enduring reality. A city that stood because he did not break. Chapter 12, Final Reflection. The blueprint of revenge. The garage smelled of cold concrete and lingering dust, the faint metallic tang of abandoned machinery hovering in the air. Dominic Reinhardt pushed open the heavy steel door with deliberate care. The hinges groaned faintly, a hollow sound that seemed to echo off the empty walls. Years of memories and months of torment had been etched into this space, but now it was quiet, still, vacant. He stepped inside, letting the faint light from the high windows wash over the remnants of his past. Once this garage had been a place of creation, a storage of tools, sketches, and models for projects that would shape skylines. Now, it bore the imprint of betrayal, the silence of absent trust, and the ghosts of those who had sought to undermine him. Dominic walked slowly, boots echoing on the concrete floor. Each step was measured, deliberate, a meditation in motion. He stopped near the center, staring at the place where the walls had once been covered with photographs, stolen files, and proof of treachery. The surface was now bare, scraped clean, a blank slate. No anger rose in him. No bitterness. Not anymore. He knelt down, tracing a finger over a faint scratch in the concrete, a mark left by a hastily dropped frame months ago, evidence of the chaos that had once consumed him. He allowed himself a small, wry smile. Funny, he murmured, almost to himself. All that noise, all that destruction, and now nothing. The words weren't hollow. They were statement. A declaration that the storm had passed, and only the calm remained. He stood and walked to the far corner of the garage, brushing his hand along the cold, smooth wall. Every corner, every shadow, seemed to whisper fragments of memory. Bradley's laughter, Victoria's frantic pleas, the endless planning, the meticulous documentation, the slow, precise unraveling of those who had betrayed him. Dominic's chest rose and fell steadily. He didn't curse the past. He didn't rail against it. Instead, he examined it like he would a blueprint. Every mistake, every misstep, every act of treachery had been a structural flaw, one that required demolition before a new framework could rise. He crouched near the center of the garage, fingers brushing over the faint markings left by years of planning. Sketches of towers, hand-drawn annotations, measurements long forgotten. The very space that had once witnessed his private agony now held the quiet satisfaction of a project completed, a project not of steel or glass, but of human endurance and retribution. Dominic spoke aloud, low, and controlled. It wasn't a downfall. It was the demolition phase. Before rebuilding, everything must be cleared. His voice echoed softly, bouncing off the bare walls. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't rage. It was clarity, the voice of a man who had dismantled every obstacle, faced every betrayal, and emerged intact, unbroken, precise. He wandered toward the wall where the stolen files and photos had once been pinned. He imagined them there for a brief moment, as though recalling the drama, the shock, the humiliation. But that was no longer real. The files had been sent to Naomi Vale, backed up, secured. The evidence of betrayal was cataloged, controlled, untouchable. The past had been acknowledged and neutralized. Dominic's eyes lingered on the empty space. The blank wall felt symbolic, a canvas for the future. He could almost see it, a space ready for creation, free from the weight of treachery, the clutter of deceit. He leaned against a column and closed his eyes, letting the stillness wash over him. Months of plotting, weeks of strategic maneuvers, hours of meticulous observation, all had led to this serenity. The garage, once a chamber of chaos, had become a sanctuary of closure. Funny, he said again, softer this time, almost reverent, how demolition makes way for construction, how the collapse of some structures allows stronger ones to rise. He opened his eyes and walked to the corner where a dusty workbench stood. Tools still lay scattered, some covered in sheets of dust, models of old projects leaning against the wall, abandoned yet intact. He picked up a scale model of a tower he had designed long ago, studying its sharp lines and intricate details. His hands were steady, deliberate. He turned it over, checking the base, the structure, the support beams. Even here, in miniature, he could see the blueprint of resilience. Dominic's lips curved slightly into a smile. Not triumph over others, but triumph over circumstance. He had taken the chaos, the betrayal, and the near destruction of his life, and transformed it into precision, into order, into legacy. He set the model back gently, standing to survey the empty garage once more. Light from the windows reflected across the floor, casting elongated shadows that stretched toward him. The shadows didn't frighten him. They reminded him of the past and of how far he had come. For a long moment, he simply stood there, quiet, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, feeling the solidity of the floor beneath him, the permanence of the walls around him. Everything was intact. Everything was under control. He had not faltered. He had not broken. Dominic walked toward the exit slowly, taking one last look over his shoulder. The garage had borne witness to betrayal, planning, revenge, and resolution. Now it was merely a space, a framework, a reminder that even the most chaotic of structures can be emptied, rebuilt, and perfected. He opened the steel door and stepped into the sunlight. The city sprawled before him, vibrant and alive, as if nothing had happened. But he knew better. Every building, every street, every person who walked past his creations owed their presence, in some part, to the vigilance, precision, and endurance of a man who had refused to break. Dominic breathed deeply, letting the air fill his lungs, steadying himself. He didn't carry bitterness, anger, or desire for revenge anymore. That work had been completed. The betrayers were gone. The files were secured. The tower had risen. The city had moved on. And so had he. He allowed himself a final thought, calm, deliberate, and resonant. The blueprint of revenge, he murmured, is also the blueprint of resilience. Destruction is not the end, it is the beginning. With that, he stepped away from the garage entirely. He didn't look back, not with longing, not with pain, not with regret, only with closure. Dominic Reinhardt had faced the collapse of his world, orchestrated the precise dismantling of those who had betrayed him, and now stood ready to construct something stronger, lasting, unshakable. The empty garage, once a chamber of chaos, now represented a quiet truth. That strength is forged not in the absence of destruction, but in the calm, methodical reconstruction that follows it. And with that thought, he walked into the city, the sunlight catching the edges of his figure, a man at peace with the past and confident in the structures he had yet to build.